Have your family or friends ever told you that they don't believe in the Bible, that it's just a myth? The Bible tells us in Psalms 85 verse 11, "Truth shall spring out of the earth." And now it has. realdiscoveries.com presents amazing hard evidence concerning the stories of the Bible. For generations, the Holy Land has kept its secrets hidden. Secrets which strongly support the Bible's account of history. The Real Discoveries team dig deep in search of the truth behind the people and places described in biblical stories and unearth some truly breathtaking findings. Real people, real places, realdiscoveries.com. In Genesis 18 verse 20, the Bible tells of two cities named Sodom and Gomorrah.
Then the Lord said, "The outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is so great, and their sin so grievous, that I will go down and see if what they have done is as bad as the outcry that has reached me. If not,
Sodom and Gomorrah,
I will know."
beside the Dead Sea, which became so evil that God rained down burning sulfur upon them. The two cities were completely annihilated. Simon and a group of skeptics traveled to the Dead Sea in Israel to search for the remains of Sodom and Gomorrah. What they found left them speechless. Shapes resembling ziggurats, sphinxes, and strange buildings lay amid a wasteland of ash and sulfur.
Ziggurats, sphinxes,
Journey with the Real Discoveries team to the destroyed cities of Sodom and Gomorrah and see for yourself the evidence that they truly were incinerated by God.
brimstone, bigger than any that Simon had found. Filled with excitement, everyone began looking under bushes. Suddenly, it was everywhere, like strawberry picking, bigger and bigger samples. "66 samples were collected in all that day. Fired into the wall at a phenomenal velocity, the sphere burning at a ferocious heat had melted the wall around it, creating a brown husk before it was extinguished, starved of oxygen.
Join the team as they take these deadly sulfuric missiles to be tested in the laboratory and witness for yourself the jaw-dropping results.
Back in the UK, Simon, Emma, and Einar began the long job of evaluating what they had found at the Intertech Sunbury Technology Center. An X-ray fluorescent technician was to supervise an analysis of the brimstone samples. In order to provide a sample good enough for the precision of the X-ray fluorescent spectrometer to read, Andy had to be very thorough in his preparation. In short, Simon's brimstone samples were to be analyzed. Then the same tests would be conducted on sulfur flowers that had been chemically refined by laboratory methods. What was happening was difficult to grasp.
But if you're finding it actually sort of embedded in walls and things like that.
To cut them out with the walls.
Right. No.
Yeah, my husband spent an hour cutting out
Right.
one out of actual rock where it was just so embedded in the rock because you couldn't actually pull it out.
Right.
I've got a prize specimen at home. It's about the size of my fist.
Right.
And I cut it right out the rock, and I stood in the rock, left it in there, where it's come down.
Right.
And embedded itself
Right.
It may have burned for some time, and then
Yes. Yeah, because the outside probably would be very hot, and therefore it would
Yeah.
burn. Yes. No, I haven't seen anything like that.
Hi, good evening. Welcome to another live program, Revelation TV. Tonight's program is all about the search for Sodom and Gomorrah. I've got a couple in the studio tonight who went out in search of Sodom and Gomorrah, and I'll introduce you to them in a second. Arrange for it to be done.
See them burn one of the balls of sulfur sent down from the heavens to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah.
Same sulfur.
Revelation what?
Revelation 21, verse 7.
Okay.
It's mentioned there. The same sulfur that came down on these evil cities, we're told that they will come down again in the future.
Revelation 21?
Revelation 21, verse 7.
7. Who overcomes will inherit these things.
That's it.
Okay.
Carry on through there and you'll
Okay,
see.
but the cowardly and the unbelieving and the abominable and the murderers and the immoral persons and sorcerers and idolaters and all liars, their part will be in the lake that burns with fire and brimstone. And this is the second death.
That's correct.
So here we're looking at the lighting of one of these sulfur balls, which was found way back. Well, it was originally landed somewhat 3,500, 4,000 years ago. Was that the
Yeah,
timing?
about 3,900 years ago.
Oh, 3,900 to be
Yes,
precise.
that's
To the
roughly.
day.
That's correct.
And here you can see, now you couldn't do this with a stone, could you? You couldn't make it burn. So this is quite unique. Bob, how unique is this? We're hearing it obviously from Simon and Emma, but
Well, the smell is pretty unique, I must
is it?
admit.
That's not me.
But unique in that you only
Wow.
find these balls, apparently, in these 5 areas where the 5 cities would have existed. Normal
Oh, it's a
sulfur.
strong smell.
It
It smells
really
like
is
it is
powerful.
when you're in the Dead Sea.
Yeah,
You've got that smell, haven't you?
Yeah. And these balls are only found in this area down by the Dead Sea. Usually sulfur is found in crystal form, but nowhere can you find it like this. So that makes it very unique. Oh, it is pretty
Very strong.
powerful,
Great.
very strong, isn't it?
This is an
This is the
example.
first time we've ever had anything like this.
realdiscoveries.com. Real people, real places, realdiscoveries.com. Journey on with the Real Discoveries team as they search for the true location of the tomb of Jesus Christ and the real site of his crucifixion.
Our search for the tomb of Jesus.
For centuries, some of the world's greatest explorers have sought the tomb of Jesus, only to stumble across as many questions as answers. Now a handful of believers seek the answers to those questions and the truth about possibly the most important archaeological puzzle in human history in an incredible new documentary feature by the Real Discoveries team. Led by 46-year-old former UK businessman Simon Brown, are a tenacious group of explorers on a mission to prove the stories of the Bible. Fresh on the heels of their acclaimed films, Our Search for Sodom and Gomorrah and Our Search for Real Discoveries, aired on Sky Television, Simon and his team set off in search of the final resting place of Jesus Christ. On their travels, the Real Discoveries team meets scholars and historians, scientists and archaeologists as they gradually piece together the mystery of the tomb of Jesus. Matching their real-world findings to details straight from the pages of the Bible, their new film, Our Search for the Tomb of Jesus, weaves an incredible tale that spans millennia, from Constantine the Great to the Knights Templar, to modern-day Jerusalem and the many secrets she still harbors. This new DVD includes brand new evidence never before seen on screen about the legendary tomb of Jesus Christ, including the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and the famous Garden Tomb. Official Shroud of Turin photographer and renowned authority on the burial of Jesus, Barry Schwartz, was so fascinated by the discoveries made by Simon and his team that he has indicated a desire to reopen his own investigations based on their findings. You're always skeptical, says Simon, but he's seen these things with his own eyes and he was amazed. He has a passionate desire to share their discoveries with people who may not fully realize the importance of the Bible and its message. Our Search for the Tomb of Jesus is available now online at realdiscoveries.com. The Real Discoveries team reveal, for the first time ever, incredible new scientific evidence that sheds light on the truth of the resurrection. share their exhilaration as they visit two tombs, believed to be the very tombs where our Saviour Jesus Christ was laid and later rose.
Jerusalem has two sites, each of which is considered by Bible scholars and archaeologists to be the true tomb of Jesus. But they can't both be the site. And why have the arguments about Jesus' tomb become so enmeshed with issues of doctrine?
Could either of them truly be the tomb of Jesus? Find out as the Real Discoveries team explore the tomb of Jesus.
Christians believe that Jesus was crucified at a place called Golgotha, outside the walls of Jerusalem on Good Friday.
They came to a place called Golgotha, which means the place of the skull.
Jesus had cried out again in a loud voice. He gave up his spirit.
As evening approached, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who had himself become a disciple of Jesus. Going to Pilate, he asked for Jesus' body, and Pilate ordered that it be given to him. Joseph took the body, wrapped it in a clean linen cloth, and placed it in his own new tomb that he had cut out of the rock. He rolled a big stone in front of the entrance to the tomb and went away. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were sitting there opposite the tomb. After the Sabbath, at dawn on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to look at the tomb.
3 days later, on Easter Sunday, he rose from the dead, leaving the tomb empty.
There was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven, and going to the tomb, rolled back the stone and sat on it.
The tomb is significant to Christians of all denominations because it is the site of Jesus' burial and of his resurrection. But whilst the Bible tells us about the events of Holy Week, after 2,000 years, we are less certain about where these events took place. The group decided it was time to investigate the other site, the Garden Tomb. There is no church, just a quiet and peaceful garden. What evidence do we have that this is the tomb of Jesus? First of all, although there is evidence that early Christians believed this was the true site, it lay pretty well undiscovered until the middle of the 19th century. Until 1867, the site was a wasteland, and nothing was discovered until the Greek family owning the land decided to dig for water. They found a cave which they decided to excavate further to install a water cistern. The excavation took almost half a century, but in the end, the site was very much as we see it today. From time immemorial, it had been called Skull Hill, and Golgotha is Aramaic for the place of the skull. If we look at the site from here, we can clearly see the shape of the eye sockets and the nose. Gordon was sure that this was the correct site because St. John tells us that at the place where Jesus was crucified, there was a garden, and in the garden a new tomb in which no one had ever been buried. According to the Gospels, the tomb belonged to Joseph of Arimathea, a wealthy merchant who had the tomb made for himself and his family. The garden tomb is a short walk from the old city walls, near the Damascus Gate, and just around the corner is the tomb itself.
City wall down there, that's Mount Moriah, the north end up there, and that's the skull over there.
As you can see, the door into the tomb is quite small, but the tomb itself roomy, about 14.5 feet by 10 and 7.5 feet high, which is quite high considering that few men stood more than 6 feet tall. The entrance would be made intentionally small to deter grave robbers. To the front, we see the weeping chamber. The mourners would be women. On the right, here, a low wall hewn from the rock divides the room. Below, a pillow has been cut out of the rock, and beyond, an unfinished tomb, perhaps intended for Joseph of Arimathea's wife. There is a small window in the outer wall.
If you look up here, you can see what appears to be a window in the tomb. We're not actually certain what it was for. It could have been for ventilation purposes. On the other hand, some Jewish tombs of that period had a thing called a nephesh, a Hebrew word that means soul hole. And the Jews believed that after the body had been in the tomb for 3 days, the spirit departed through that window. Now it's interesting because if you remember when Jesus raised Lazarus from the grave, he waited for 4 days before doing it. Do you remember? Now he waited probably for 4 days because had he done it earlier, people would have said the spirit was still in the body and he wasn't truly dead. So we believe that's why he waited. So it's interesting, isn't it? Now the other interesting feature of this window is it allows light to fall on that grave there where we believe the body of Jesus would have rested. And that would explain why John was able to bend over and look in and actually see to the tomb and see the linen cloth lying there, because I feel if it was one of those other tombs he'd be looking into a black hole and would not have been able to see. So again, it does fit the biblical picture.
The tomb is certainly large enough for Peter and John to enter it and find 2 angels seated where Jesus' body had lain, one at the head and the other at the foot. Only the finished localus, the grave area, looks to have been used, and there is no sign that any other body was ever here.
Covering the tomb that you can see in front of you, except that this right-hand side had collapsed, we think, due to earthquake damage, and at that time they strengthened it with these stone blocks. Now when you go into the tomb, don't think it's a natural cave that's been adapted as a tomb. It's not. It's been cut out of the rock just as described in the Bible. And it's a large and impressive tomb, speaking of it being the tomb of a rich man like Joseph of Arimathea. A poor person couldn't afford a tomb of this kind. Now when it was in use as a tomb, the entrance was much lower than you see it at the moment. We think it was only about 1 meter high. So you'd have to bend down to look into it or to go into it. And as you probably know, it was sealed by a large rolling stone, wasn't it? Now we've never found that original stone, but it would have looked a little like that one behind you. Can you see that one there? That one's dated back to that period, so it gives you some idea of what it looked like.
Here are the chisel marks to show where the rock was hollowed out. The tomb was originally designed for someone 5 feet 8 inches tall, quite tall in ancient times. The localus has been hastily lengthened, and the space is now something over 6 feet. It is believed that Jesus was around the same height as our cameraman, 5 feet 11 inches tall. Now we come to investigate the area outside the tomb. There is a large cistern which confirms that it was almost certainly a garden in Jesus' time. The dry climate meant saving water for irrigation in underground containers in the rock. This cistern holds 250,000 gallons of water, the third largest in Jerusalem, and it must have been used to irrigate a large and luxuriant garden.
If I could remind you of a verse in John's Gospel, do you remember? It says in John's Gospel that at the place where Jesus was crucified there was a garden, and in the garden a new tomb in which no one had ever been laid. Now we've seen the possible site of the crucifixion at that place called Skull Hill. Here we are in a beautiful garden, but what's the evidence to say there was a garden here at the time of Jesus? If you look at this photograph, I think this shows you part of the evidence that tells us there was a garden here at that time. This is a very large water cistern. As you know, they dug them all over Israel in the past, didn't they, to store the rainwater in the winter, so they had plenty of water for the dry season. This one, the head of it, is just over there, and it goes deep underground. It's the third largest water cistern in Jerusalem, and it takes about 1 million litres of water, and it's been dated back to pre-Christian times, so it's over 2,000 years old. So it was certainly here at the time of Jesus. Now the discovery of this cistern and also an ancient wine press that's been found here tell us this was a garden at that time, not the sort of garden that you're looking at now, but we believe it was a cultivated area, and we think it was probably a vineyard for growing grapes with lots of water in this to water those grapes. Now because it's so extensive, it also suggests that it's a garden of a rich man like Joseph of Arimathea. We know he was wealthy, don't we? The Bible tells us. And if you remember, he and Nicodemus, they'd both become secret followers of Jesus, hadn't they? But in the end, they had the courage to come out in the open, and they went to Pilate, the Roman governor, asked for his body, and the Bible says they buried him in Joseph's own new tomb. So all the three things described in John's Gospel are found here on this site. So you can see how well it does fit the biblical account.
Just such a garden as would belong to a wealthy merchant like Joseph of Arimathea. Yards away, we have a wine press, which must have been used for the garden's fruit. It was there before Jesus' burial and is one of the largest ever found in Israel. The cistern and the wine press are circumstantial evidence, but the most telling piece of evidence is just outside the tomb. St. Matthew tells us that after Jesus' body was prepared for burial and the disciples had sent their farewells, the tomb was closed by rolling a huge circular stone across the entrance and sealing it in place. The heavy stone and seal were fitted on the orders of Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor. Here's the entrance, and outside it, the great stone with its guide track for rolling it into place. Once the stone was rolled along the guide track, completely covering the entrance, it stopped. We can see the ledge that stopped it to the right. To the left hand of the entrance, there is evidence that a metal spike was driven into the rock at a height of 71 inches. Whilst later critics doubt its authenticity, there is plenty of evidence that early Christians believed this the right place. The walls inside the tomb have red crosses etched and painted into them, together with the Greek symbols for Alpha and Omega, which Jesus, with the phrase, "I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last," was used as a metaphor for him. The team visited the Jewish National and University Library in Israel to confirm the date of these ancient maps. Dated 1584, 300 years before the garden tomb was discovered. How did the printmaker know of these locations? Both these sites were covered in rubble and not fully excavated until the 19th century. The city boundaries have changed and the walls have been rebuilt. But if we remove this section, we find Golgotha, both on a corner and outside the city walls, exactly where it should be according to the Gospels. On a hunch, Simon contacted 10 scholars who over the years have worked on the Turin Shroud. There were many questions he wanted to ask, but one held the key for him. How tall was the man in the Turin Shroud? The first reply dropped into his email box in just an hour. In reply to your inquiry, the height of the man in the Turin Shroud is 5 feet 11 inches. A tall man, then, would fit into the hurriedly altered tomb. The extra inches would accommodate Jesus rather than the 5 feet 8 of Joseph of Arimathea. This was most exciting news for Simon.
Authorities. Then Jesus came, stood among them.
Peace be with you.
After saying this, he showed them his hands and his side. The disciples were filled with joy at seeing the Lord. One of the 12 disciples, Thomas, called the twin, was not with them when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord."
Unless I see the scars of the nails in his hands, and put my finger on those scars, and my hand in his side, I will not believe.
Peace be with you. Put your finger here and look at my hands. Then reach out your hand and put it in my side. Stop your doubting and believe.
My Lord and my God.
Do you believe? Because you see me. How happy are those who believe without seeing me?
Now, more historical importance has been uncovered. More evidence is now emerging and unlocking the most hidden secrets of the historical existence of Sodom and Gomorrah, including the region and the remains of the cities of the plain, as told in Genesis 14:1-3, 14:8-10, 34-3.
In Genesis 18 verse 20, the Bible tells of 2 cities named Sodom and Gomorrah.
Then the Lord said, "The outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is so great, and their sin so grievous, that I will go down and see if what they have done is as bad as the outcry that has reached me. If not,
Sodom and Gomorrah, beside the Dead Sea, which became so evil that God rained down burning sulfur upon them. The 2 cities were completely annihilated. Simon and a group of skeptics traveled to the Dead Sea in Israel to search for the remains of Sodom and Gomorrah. What they found left them speechless. Shapes resembling ziggurats, sphinxes, and strange buildings lay amid a wasteland of ash and sulfur.
Ziggurats, sphinxes,
evidence not only confirms with the Hebrew book of Genesis, it is evidence outside of the Bible that indicates Sodom and Gomorrah, the cities of the plain, were indeed situated and located on the plain in the southern region of the land of Canaan, the Jordan River plain, or the modern-day Dead Sea. While Simon was studying, he was excited to discover an article about Sodom and Gomorrah on the Wikipedia site saying, Strabo states that locals living near Masada, as opposed to Masada, say that there were once 13 inhabited cities in that region, of which Sodom was the metropolis. Who was Strabo? He was a Greek historian, geographer, and philosopher who was born to an affluent family. From Amasia in Pontus, modern Amasia, Turkey, and lived in 64-63 BC, CA, AD 24. It is written that Strabo travelled to many places, studying and writing. It seems Strabo was like the Flavius Josephus. Why is this interesting? It is interesting because his statement confirms with what Simon has always believed. Simon has travelled to the southern region of the land of Canaan, the Jordan River plain, the modern-day Dead Sea, 5 times, filming and researching these remains of Sodom and Gomorrah, looking to discover the truth. And just as Strabo states, there were once inhabited cities in that region of which Sodom was the metropolis. This is the same region and place where Simon researched and found most of the evidence of the remains of Gomorrah, right at the base of Masada. And as stated by the locals living near Masada, thousands of years ago by Strabo. If you travel from Jericho down to the plain in the southern region of the land of Canaan, on the shore of the Dead Sea, you see patches of buildings, shapes, and shadows all the way down to the furthest point of the Dead Sea. However, the most obvious 2 built-up regions are most definitely at the base of Masada, which Simon believes is the ashen city of Gomorrah.
The fortress at Masada is not mentioned in the Bible, yet it is a popular tourist destination and thousands visit it every year. Few, if any, know that to get there they must drive through the ruined city of Gomorrah. The views from the mountain are breathtaking, and you can clearly see the ashes. What better way for God to remind us what happened to the ungodly, and what will happen to us if we do not repent from our sins? Peter chapter 2, verse 6. If he condemned the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah by burning them into ashes and making them an example of what is going to happen to the ungodly.
And if you then continue driving down to the southwestern tip of the Dead Sea, you end up at a very built-up region of far greater looking buildings, shapes and shadows. Here is some footage of when we first visited Sodom.
Like Gomorrah, the cream ashen structures against the brown-colored mountains was even more marked at this level, but the architecture and layout of the city was very different. The buildings seemed to be arranged in terraces. Stream beds and watercourses, pebbles, water in abundance running right through the city. Dams directing water sometimes under buildings. Structures lining the banks of the streams. Fossils, some that looked like mussels, fused together by what appears to be a great burst of heat.
Strabo also states here, Strabo identifies a limestone and salt hill at the southwestern tip of the Dead Sea, and Kibbut Uzdum ruins nearby as the site of biblical Sodom. How amazing! This is the same region to which Simon took a crew in the hope that he would find the remains of Sodom. When they got to the tip of the Dead Sea, they found themselves staring at a very built-up region of great buildings, shapes and shadows. They found a sign saying Mount Sodom.
About 35 kilometers past Gomorrah, they found a road sign reading, "For Mount Sodom." The party disembarked and began to scale the hill. Not being experienced mountaineers and all having different levels of fitness, they were soon separated. Paul was well ahead of Simon, whilst the others lagged behind him. The terrain and the sheer height of the mount proved to be too dangerous for untrained climbers, so the attempt was abandoned. Even the descent was hazardous, and had begun the drive back when something changed their course. A small bumpy track appeared just about wide enough for the minibus. The driver wasn't happy to take his bus on a road that really needed a 4x4, but they encouraged him to try, and mercifully he agreed. At crawling pace, they drove through what seemed like a mountain pass. The driver cheered up as the road straightened out. Suddenly, what they had come all this way to see was right in front of them.
Half-hour later, they were standing amongst what looked like shadows, double Canaanite walls, and many types of sphinx and ziggurats.
Man has always demonstrated his religion on high places. The Bible constantly refers to this. Ziggurats. Sphinxes.
The courses of old streams, walls, dams and weirs with mortar joints, structures lining the banks of the streams, strange-looking buildings with pointed and flat roofs. Now, for the first time ever, Simon had more written historical evidence by another Greek historian, geographer and philosopher, stating Sodom and Gomorrah, the cities of the plain, were in the exact same places and region we filmed and researched.
They decided to drive further into the dead city, past the strange shapes and walls.
Only this time better still, Strabo revealed the exact region to be the same as written in Genesis 14:1-3, 14:8-10 and 34:3 of the Bible, and the same region Simon's crew and he investigated. We now have two historians confirming: 1. There were once inhabited cities in that region of the Dead Sea, near Masada, under the metropolis city of Sodom. 2. That Sodom was at the southwestern tip of the Dead Sea, by a salt hill, which Simon believed could be the very hill that his crew and he climbed. 3. Which was also written by Flavius Josephus, who stated that there are still the remains of the divine fire, and the traces or shadows of 5 cities are still to be seen.
Shapes resembling ziggurats, sphinxes and strange buildings lay amid a wasteland of ash and sulphur.
Ziggurats, sphinxes,
Interestingly, geologists have confirmed that no volcanic activity occurred within the last 4,000 years at the plains of the Dead Sea. So where did the mysterious balls of sulphur come from? Wikipedia now says, all sites that were located near the Dead Sea had evidence of burning and traces of sulphur. From Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia. If we look in the pages of the Bible of Genesis 19:24, we can see where the sulphur came from.
Then the Lord said, the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is so great, and their sin so grievous, that I will go down and see if what they have done is as bad as the outcry that has reached me. If not,
Sodom and Gomorrah,
I will know.
beside the Dead Sea, which became so evil that God rained down burning sulphur upon them. The 2 cities were completely annihilated.
Sadly, for many, unless we are truly born again, we will not be able to see or understand these buildings, shapes and shadows, and the mysterious balls of sulphur. Unless we accept Jesus as our Lord and Saviour, no matter how hard we look or how far we travel, we will be unable to find the hidden secrets and the deeper meaning and underlying truth of the reality of God's Word. As we still see today, so many are still looking, yet not seeing, yet the evidence is right in front of us, but many are still scratching their heads. The Bible has never been wrong.
Though seeing, they do not see.
Though hearing, they do not hear or understand. In them was fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah.
You will be ever hearing, but never understanding. You will be ever seeing, but never perceiving.
For this people's heart has become calloused. They hardly hear with their ears, and they have closed their eyes. Otherwise they might see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and turn.
First, we must accept Jesus, take up our cross and follow him. Then we will discover his hidden secrets. As for others, Simon hopes you agree with the evidence of these buildings, shapes and shadows that his crew and him found and investigated by the Dead Sea, which was believed to have been originally discovered by Ron Wyatt, are now starting to shoot the skeptics and the scoffers in the foot. More proof that conveys important truths that once were concealed mysteries are now emerging from their secret hiding place.
Nearby was a strange-looking building with a pointed roof, surrounded by tons of hard ash. They estimated the height at 50 feet or more, and Peter wanted to climb it. Simon watched his progress and fell to wondering what it had originally looked like. The white ashen remains stood out clearly against the backdrop of brown mountains and hills. Everyone who has been here has been affected by this strange, silent city, and the mind imagines the people and the things they did to so offend God. Genesis 13, verse 13. Now the men of Sodom were wicked and sinning greatly against the Lord. The Jewish Talmud, which contains much ancient history, has many stories concerning the evil in Sodom. One of Lot's daughters was condemned to death by burning for feeding a starving man, though she later escaped to Zoar. Another girl was covered in honey and stung to death by bees for helping a stranger. There are many more tales like that.
We presume because you are taking the time to watch this, you too are hungry to discover more. We like to receive feedback from you, as we are open-minded and willing to listen to what people have to say. In the meantime, Simon is planning to visit the shore of the Dead Sea again to do some more research on the southern region of the tip of the Dead Sea. If you are interested and would like to go with Simon and his crew, then please leave a comment on this video. May the Lord God of Abraham, Isaac and Jacob bless you. In Jesus' name we pray.
So, drawing from all of the resources we have used, what have we discovered about this story? That in 5 distinct locations, 5 ashen cities exist that are identified in the Syrian tablets discovered in Ebla, described by the historian Josephus in AD 75, where we find the same patterns of architecture, the same composition of ashen walls, that in each of these places, hundreds of thousands of balls of sulfur are present, which, when we have them meticulously analyzed, yield a purity level as high or possibly higher than any form of the element known to man. That it would appear there is nowhere else on the planet that such samples exist, to the point where eminent scientists and specialists who know all about their subject admit that they have never seen anything like them. That natural disasters like volcanic activity or industrial accidents fail to explain adequately the baked ash, or the hundreds of thousands of sulfur missiles burning at temperatures that cannot be calculated with modern machinery, that have been embedded in walls and sprayed around the close proximity of these 5 cities, so selectively that no trace of them exists in the terrain in between the 5 sites whatsoever, and above all, that a detailed description of the events, the locations, the substances, and the reasons why this all happened exists in the Bible that we hold in our hands today, that fits together perfectly in the minutest detail, endorsed by clay tablets as clear as the Dead Sea Scrolls' first-century historians and scientific research of the 3rd millennium. Then perhaps it's time to accept such overwhelming evidence not as a myth, but unquestionable reality.
Dear friends, if anyone tells you Sodom and Gomorrah has not been found, then don't believe them, but please believe what the Bible tells us, that God made these cities of Sodom and Gomorrah an example. If there's nothing to be seen, then how can they be an example? Friends, believe, receive, and follow Jesus.
Peace be with you. Put your finger here and look at my hands. Then reach out your hand and put it in my side. Stop your doubting and believe.
My Lord and my God.
Do you believe because you see me? How happy are those who believe without seeing me?
The cities have been preserved. Has she?
As evening approached, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who had himself become a disciple of Jesus. Going to Pilate, he asked for Jesus' body, and Pilate ordered that it be given to him. Joseph took the body, wrapped it in a clean linen cloth, and placed it in his own new tomb that he had cut out of the rock. He rolled a big stone in front of the entrance to the tomb and went away.
At the end of 2011, I, Emma Brown, presented evidence of Simon's research. This shows that the Great Stone at Mount Nebo is the Great Stone told about in Mark 16:4 and Matthew 27:60, as having been rolled to seal the tomb of Jesus. As most of us are aware, this great stone was cut, made and used by Joseph of Arimathea. He rolled the stone so that it sealed the tomb of Jesus.
Joseph took the body, wrapped it in a clean linen cloth, and placed it in his own new tomb that he had cut out of the rock. He rolled a big stone in front of the entrance to the tomb and went away.
Now this great stone has never been seen or discovered since it disappeared from the true tomb. Just as Jim and Penny of the Split Rock Research Foundation discovered the missing link, the split rock of Exodus 17:6, which was needed to identify the true Mount Sinai of Moses.
Came up and split that rock, because it is split clean like a laser right down the middle. As big as it is, and the water under pressure like that, would have come sailing out of that rock and scoured off the 8 to 10 inches of topsoil, and immediately formed like a gigantic lake out in the front of this split rock. And everybody could have come all at one time, not with a little cup like I had in my mind, but everybody could have come all at one time and taken their fill of water. Flocks, herds, animals.
So Simon has discovered this missing link, the Great Stone of Mark 16:4. This stone is the only one of its kind in the world, and thus identifies the true tomb of Jesus. After becoming fascinated by this subject, Simon made a film in 2007.
Our search for the tomb of Jesus. When Simon
this was and still is played on Christian Sky TV, making us feel honoured and blessed by God. In this film, Simon and his team took many measurements of the exterior of the channel at the tomb in the garden. This was to help them work out the size of the stone needed to seal the tomb. Simon believed that if they could discover this stone, it would then reveal the true tomb of Jesus. Why? Both Mark and Matthew make it very clear in their Gospels that this stone at the true tomb of Jesus was not a normal sized stone, it was a great stone. Four years have now passed since Simon did this work, and we had no idea of what was to come. The last thing on Simon's mind was finding the great stone which would fit the channel and identify the true tomb of Jesus. Was God rewarding Simon for his previous efforts? We don't know, but what we do know is that when Simon first saw a great stone in a Christian video, he nearly fainted. You may say, so what? Please continue reading and watch the video, so that I can make it clear why this discovery could not have been an accident. After Simon had studied the stone in this video, he believed it was God's will for him to go to the Garden Tomb and Mount Nebo to take measurements and samples of both. Could God be revealing something so amazing? If so, who would believe it? Simon, however, did not doubt it was God revealing this himself. At this point, the Garden Tomb Association, although reluctant, were willing to listen to him and allowed him to gather up the evidence and then present it to them. They told Simon that they would meet him in their London office and discuss his research and findings. He told them he would travel to both Mount Nebo and the Garden Tomb to take measurements and samples. What did Simon's research discover? The great stone at Mount Nebo is the same colour as the tomb. The same type of rock, the perfect thickness. The perfect height, and has the identical chisel marks. For nearly 2,000 years, this great stone had seemingly no reason for existing and no importance. No one knew its age. No one had any idea of why it was kept and guarded by Christians, even today. The Christians themselves knew nothing about it, not even why they were still protecting and guarding it like a treasure. Simon finally presented all this information to the Garden Tomb Association, as he had told them at the very beginning that he would. He was not welcomed, but rather he seemed to have offended them, despite telling the absolute truth. They told Simon they were not interested as to whether this was the missing great stone or not. You can read the correspondence on our site. Sadly, the Garden Tomb staff refuse to believe that this is the great stone from the tomb of Jesus. Steve, one of the staff, told me that the stone at Mount Nebo is far too large to be the missing stone from the Garden Tomb. He said that the true diameter of the stone is between 4 and 6 feet. He, and probably most of their staff, appear to be ignoring what is written in the two Gospels. The Gospels make it very clear that the stone at the true tomb of Jesus was not a stone of a normal size. It says in Mark 16:4, King James Version, "For it was very great." In Matthew 27, King James Version, it says,
He rolled a big stone in front of the entrance to the tomb and went away.
The stone at Mount Nebo is very great, and it fits only one tomb in the world, the Garden Tomb. Here is a stone that the Garden Tomb Association still teach their visitors is like the original stone. Is this stone an extremely large stone? This picture is of a typical tomb in the Holy Land. The stone is not an unusual size. This is what many believed the stone would be like in the Garden Tomb. I believe this stone is between 4 and 5 feet in diameter, a typical stone. Now, let's look at the great stone at Mount Nebo, guarded by Christians for no known reason. This is a great stone and it is the only one on this planet. What does the Bible state? In the Greek text, it states the stone was large extremely. Do you believe a stone with a diameter of between 4 and 6 feet would be described like this? Sadly, but clearly, it can be seen that what the Garden Tomb Association staff teach contradicts the biblical text. Regardless of all the research and the great amount of evidence that has been presented, Steve still maintained that there is no evidence that proves this great stone at Mount Nebo is from the Garden Tomb. Prove all things, hold fast that which is good. 1 Thessalonians 5-21. These doubts have been expressed regardless of the fact that the great stone at Mount Nebo is 15 inches thick, corresponding to the channel at the Garden Tomb, which is 15 inches wide. They have been expressed regardless of the fact that the samples of this great stone match samples of rock from the Garden Tomb, as evidenced by scientific analysts at a laboratory in the UK. They have been expressed regardless of the discovery of some very old photographs of the Garden Tomb, taken between 1898 and 1946, just after the tomb was discovered. These photographs reveal an additional stone in the channel acting as a stopper. This original stopper is new evidence. By its position, we can establish that the diameter of the great stone at this tomb was between 9 and 10 feet. This is the original great stone of Mark 16:4, made by Joseph of Arimathea. On the website for the International Symposium of Heritage Interpretation, there is an interesting article about the great stone at Mount Nebo. It says that at the Mount Nebo site, several large and interesting archaeological artefacts have been discovered, such as Roman milestones and a large circular tomb door. It says that these have been saved from loss in their original locations off-site and placed in the grounds of the memorial for Moses. Just what they are, where they came from, and why they are there is not in every case immediately clear to the visitor. How interesting! They say it is a tomb door, but they don't know what tomb it comes from. and they don't realise that the stone only fits one tomb in the world, the Garden Tomb. It is clear that not everyone agrees with the staff of the Garden Tomb, who believe there is no evidence to support Simon's conclusions. One comment left on Simon's YouTube channel was potentially explosive evidence. Author Perry Stone states in his book, Secrets from Beyond the Grave, it is a massive rolling stone, on page 136. Bob Mitchell, prophetic preacher of Shofar Ministries, believed that this stone has perhaps been preserved by the Byzantine believers and placed on Mount Nebo as a memorial to the resurrection to save the stone from damage or loss. The Bible is most certainly reliable. Acts 13:41 says, "Look, you scoffers, wonder and perish, for I am going to do something in your days that you would never believe, even if someone told you." It proves there is only one tomb in the world with this description. It proves the reliability and the accuracy of the Gospels. What are the odds of this being the Great Stone? Where on this planet or any other planet is there a rolling stone? A stone that is nearly 10 foot in diameter. A stone that is 15 inches thick. A stone that is great and identical to the description outlined in the Gospels. That is the same colour and has the same marks. A stone that fits the Garden Tomb like a glove. We make the odds of there being a stone identical to this one 1,000,000 to 1. Even with these odds, who will believe it? Above all, you must understand that in the last days, scoffers will come, scoffing and following their own evil desires. 2 Peter 3:3. Yes, God has now revealed the truth of the true tomb. There is only one place in the whole world that is the Garden Tomb of Jesus. What do you believe? The great stone at Mount Nebo, overlooking the Promised Land, is a testimony by God Almighty, reminding all mankind that He sent from heaven an angel to roll away the stone. This signified that the debt was fully paid and Joshua is now legally discharged, and so are those who believe in him. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. John 3:16.
It is finished. Then he bowed his head and gave up his spirit. Then the Jewish authorities asked Pilate to allow them to break the legs of the men who had been crucified and to take the bodies down from the crosses. They requested this because it was Friday, and they did not want the bodies to stay on the crosses on the Sabbath, since the coming Sabbath was especially holy. So the soldiers went and broke the legs of the first man, and then of the other man who had been crucified with Jesus. But when they came to Jesus, they saw that he was already dead, so they did not break his legs. One of the soldiers, however, plunged his spear into Jesus' side. And at once, blood and water poured out. The one who saw this happen has spoken of it, so that you may also believe. What he said is true, and he knows that he speaks the truth. This was done to make the scripture come true. Not one of his bones will be broken. And there is another scripture that says, people will look at him whom they pierced. After this, Joseph, who was from the town of Arimathea, asked Pilate if he could take Jesus' body. Joseph was a follower of Jesus, but in secret because he was afraid of the Jewish authorities. Pilate told him he could have the body, so Joseph went and took it away. Nicodemus, who at first had gone to see Jesus at night, went with Joseph, taking with him about 100 pounds of spices, a mixture of myrrh and aloes. The two men took Jesus' body and wrapped it in linen cloths with the spices, according to the Jewish custom of preparing a body for burial. There was a garden in the place where Jesus had been put to death, and in it there was a new tomb where no one had ever been buried. Since it was the day before the Sabbath, and because the tomb was close by, they placed Jesus' body there.
The next day, the one after Preparation Day, the chief priests and the Pharisees went to Pilate.
Sir,
they said,
we remember that while he was still alive, that deceiver said, after 3 days I will rise again. So give the order for the tomb to be made secure until the 3rd day. Otherwise his disciples may come and steal the body and tell the people that he's been raised from the dead. This last deception will be worse than the first.
Take a guard,
Pilate answered.
Go make the tomb as secure as you know how.
So they went and made the tomb secure by putting a seal on the stone and posting a guard. After the Sabbath, at dawn on the 1st day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to look at the tomb. There was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven, and going to the tomb, rolled back the stone and sat on it.
Early on Sunday morning, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb and saw that the stone had been taken away from the entrance. She went running to Simon Peter and the other disciple whom Jesus loved.
They have taken the Lord from the tomb, and we don't know where they have put him.
Then Peter and the other disciple went to the tomb. The two of them were running, but the other disciple ran faster than Peter and reached the tomb first. He bent over and saw the linen cloths, but he did not go in. Behind him came Simon Peter, and he went straight into the tomb. He saw the linen cloths lying there, and the cloth which had been around Jesus' head. It was not lying with the linen cloths, but was rolled up by itself. Then the other disciple who had reached the tomb first also went in. He saw and believed. They still did not understand the scripture which said that he must rise from death. Then the disciples went back home. Mary stood crying outside the tomb. While she was still crying, she bent over and looked in the tomb. And saw two angels there, dressed in white, sitting where the body of Jesus had been, one at the head, the other at the feet. "Woman, why are you crying?" they asked her.
They have taken my Lord away, and I do not know where they have put him.
Then she turned around and saw Jesus standing there. But she did not know that it was Jesus.
Woman, why are you crying? Who was it that you were looking for?
She thought he was the gardener, so she said to him,
If you took him away, sir, tell me where you have put him, and I will go and get him.
Mary.
She turned toward him and said in Hebrew,
Rabboni.
This means teacher.
Do not hold on to me, because I have not yet gone back up to the Father. But go to my brothers and tell them, I am returning to him who is my Father and their Father, my God and their God.
So Mary Magdalene went and told the disciples that she had seen the Lord, and related to them what he had told her. It was late that Sunday evening, and the disciples were gathered together behind locked doors because they were afraid of the Jewish authorities. Then Jesus came, stood among them.
Peace be with you.
After saying this, he showed them his hands and his side. The disciples were filled with joy at seeing the Lord. Jesus said to them again,
Peace be with you. As the Father sent me, so I send you.
Then he breathed on them.
Receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive people's sins, they are forgiven. If you do not forgive them, they are not forgiven.
One of the 12 disciples, Thomas, called the twin, was not with them when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, We have seen the Lord.
Unless I see the scars of the nails in his hands, and put my finger on those scars, and my hand in his side, I will not believe.
A week later, the disciples were together again indoors, and Thomas was with them. The doors were locked, but Jesus came and stood among them.
Peace be with you. Put your finger here and look at my hands. Then reach out your hand and put it in my side. Stop your doubting and believe.
My Lord and my God.
Do you believe? because you see me. How happy are those who believe without seeing me?
In his disciples' presence, Jesus performed many other miracles which are not written down in this book. But these have been written in order that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that through your faith in him you may have life.
More evidence and updates on the Great Stone at Mount Nebo.
As evening approached, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who had himself become a disciple of Jesus. Going to Pilate, he asked for Jesus' body, and Pilate ordered that it be given to him. Joseph took the body, wrapped it in a clean linen cloth, and placed it in his own new tomb that he had cut out of the rock. He rolled a big stone in front of the entrance to the tomb and went away.
An interesting article was written about the Great Stone at Mount Nebo on a website of 8th US/ICO-MOS International Symposium, Heritage Interpretation, Charleston, South Carolina, May 5th to the 8th, 2005. Observation: large and interesting archaeological artefacts, such as Roman milestones and a large circular tomb door, have been saved from loss in their original locations off-site and placed in the grounds of the Memorial of Moses. Just what they are, where they came from, and why they are there is not in every case immediately clear to the visitor. How interesting they say it is a tomb door, but they don't know what tomb it comes from, and they don't realise the stone only fits one tomb in the world, the Garden Tomb. Was the great stone taken to Mount Nebo in the first place to be erected on the site? Not where Moses was buried, but where Moses died. This would make perfect sense to why the Byzantines moved this stone from the tomb in the garden. This could be the connection. In the very old village next to the present Mount Nebo monastery, where the stone was found in the beginning, there could possibly be some kind of markings where Moses died. You see, many places in the Bible were preserved and God made it clear. Moses' body will remain hidden, but God did not say Moses' place of death would not be known. And this would be the perfect connection with the stone from the tomb of Jesus, with Mount Nebo and the Bible prophecy. If you would like to know more about the Garden Tomb and the Great Stone, please visit our websites, The Garden Tomb and the GreatStone.com and www.realdiscoveries.info. We would like to present before you our further findings which were never understood, known or seen before. I hope, no, I am sure, they will strengthen your faith and encourage you to know more about them as they have done to us. This is, of course, the great stone that has been standing alone and proud for some unknown and seemingly mysterious reason for nearly 2,000 years. And exactly in the manner this great stone stands today, Moses stood at the same place overlooking the promised land. For nearly 2,000 years, this great stone had seemingly no purpose of existence and no reason for importance. No one knew its age. No one had any idea of why it was kept and guarded by the Christians even today, when they themselves knew nothing about it. Not even why they were still protecting and guarding it like a treasure. At this most sacred place where Moses had closed his eyes, yet again God has intervened to destroy the skeptics and prove his word by revealing the great stone which would reveal the true tomb of Jesus. The true tomb was carved, dug and designed by Joseph of Arimathea for himself and his wife. It became the most famous place in the world later on, where Joseph was not to lay himself, he was to lay Jesus Christ, God himself. Did God command the stone to be removed from the tomb of Jesus and then be erected over the body of Moses, making this great stone also a monument to Moses? Yet Moses' body still remains disguised, unknown and hidden by our great God. Only God himself knows, as told in Deuteronomy 34. Whatever the truth, we do know that there is a prophecy in the Bible that connects Moses with everyone who believes in and follows Jesus. Well, here is another secret never before understood. If we look at the stone after it was rolled down the channel, sealing the entrance to the tomb of Jesus by Joseph of Arimathea, we see that the large stopper on the right is nowhere near the stone. This is for not stopping the stone from rolling past the entrance to the tomb. We can clearly see that this large stopper does not stop the stone at the right place. Yet the large stopper is clearly marked.
We can see how the tomb was sealed. Here's the entrance, and outside it, the great stone with its guide track for rolling it into place. Once the stone was rolled along the guide track, completely covering the entrance, it stopped. We can see the ledge that stopped it to the right. Our group measured the outside of the tomb and tried to estimate how big the stone would have been. This is the shape, and we estimated it would have had a diameter of 12 feet and weigh 9 tons.
However, there are some very old photos of the garden tomb taken between 1898 and 1946, just after the tomb was discovered. If we look at them, we can find something quite interesting. There appears to be an additional stone in the channel acting as a stopper. You can also see that the stopper is at an angle. This would suggest that the stopper in this channel, in these old photos, was indeed used to stop the stone from rolling forward. We can see that the stone is much closer than the largest stone to the right. This original stopper reveals some new evidence. By its position, we can establish the diameter of the stone that was there at this tomb. Let's now put the great stone from Mount Nebo on a photo of the garden tomb. The stone fits perfectly, and the stone proves that this stopper has been at its original place since it was laid there by Joseph of Arimathea. The stone fits perfectly. Now we have in these old photos more evidence which proves that this is indeed the great stone told about in Mark 16:4. And when they looked, they saw the stone was rolled away, for it was very great. Mark 16:4. Quite often the facts don't always seem as they are. However, we believe in this case the facts are as they seem. Yes, God has now revealed the truth of the true tomb. There is only one place in the whole world that is the garden tomb of Jesus. We are Simon and Emma Brown, and thank you for watching this video. May God bless those who seek him. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Who would have believed what we now report?
If you had really believed Moses, you would have believed me, because he wrote about me.
Who could have seen the Lord's hand in this? It was the will of the Lord that his servant grow like a plant, taking root in dry ground.
The Word became a human being, and full of grace and truth, lived among us. We saw his glory, the glory which he received as the Father's only Son.
He had no dignity or beauty to make us take notice of him. There was nothing attractive about him, nothing that would draw us to him. We despised him and rejected him. He endured suffering and pain.
I have done many good deeds in your presence, which the Father gave me to do. For which one of these do you want to stone me?
We do not want to stone you because of any good deeds, but because of your blasphemy. You're only a man, but you're trying to make yourself God.
No one would even look at him. We ignored him as if he were nothing.
Please ask them.
Why did you not bring him? Nobody has ever talked the way this man does. Did he fool you, too? Have you ever known one of the authorities or one Pharisee to believe in him? This crowd does not know the law of Moses. So they are under God's curse.
But he endured the suffering that should have been ours, the pain that we should have borne.
Or have others told you about me?
Do you think I'm a Jew? It was your own people and the chief priests who handed you over to me. What have you done?
My kingdom does not belong to this world. If my kingdom belonged to this world, my followers would fight to keep me from being handed over to the Jewish authorities. No. My kingdom does not belong here.
Are you a king, then?
You say that I am a king. I was born and came into the world for this one purpose: to speak about the truth. Whoever belongs to the truth listens to me.
All the while, we thought that his suffering was punishment sent by God.
Crucify him! Crucify him!
You take him then, and crucify him. I find no reason to condemn him.
We have a law that says he ought to die, because he claimed to be the Son of God.
But because of our sins, he was wounded, beaten, because of the evil we did.
Here is your king.
Kill him. Kill him.
Do you want me to crucify your king?
The only king we have is the emperor.
Then Pilate handed Jesus over to them to be crucified.
We are healed by the punishment he suffered, made whole by the blows he received.
I've always spoken publicly to everyone. All my teaching was done in the synagogues and in the temple where all the people come together. I have never said anything in secret. Why then do you question me? Question the people who heard me. Ask them what I told them. They know what I said. How dare you talk like that to the high priest? If I have said anything wrong, tell everyone here what it was. But if I am right in what I have said, why do you hit me?
All of us were like sheep that were lost, each of us going his own way.
This is how the judgment works. The light has come into the world, but people love the darkness rather than the light, because their deeds are evil. Those who do evil things hate the light and will not come to the light, because they do not want their evil deed to be shown up.
But the Lord made the punishment fall on him, the punishment all of us deserved.
He went back into the palace, then asked Jesus,
"Where do you come from?"
But Jesus did not answer.
You will not speak to me. Remember, I have the authority to set you free, and also to have you crucified.
You have authority over me, only because it was given to you by God.
He was treated harshly, but endured it humbly. He never said a word. Like a lamb about to be slaughtered.
Then Pilate took Jesus and had him whipped. The soldiers made a crown out of thorny branches and put it on his head. Then they put a purple robe on him and came to him and said, "Long live the King of the Jews."
And they went up and slapped him.
Like a sheep about to be sheared. He never said a word.
So they took charge of Jesus. He went out, carrying his cross, and came to the place of the skull, as it is called. In Hebrew it is called Golgotha.
He was arrested and sentenced and led off to die, and no one cared about his fate.
There they crucified him, and they also crucified 2 other men, one on each side, with Jesus between them.
He was put to death for the sins of our people.
It is finished.
Then he bowed his head and gave up his spirit.
He was placed in a grave with those who are evil. He was buried with the rich, even though he had never committed a crime.
As evening approached, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who had himself become a disciple of Jesus. Going to Pilate, he asked for Jesus' body, and Pilate ordered that it be given to him. Joseph took the body, wrapped it in a clean linen cloth, and placed it in his own new tomb that he had cut out of the rock. He rolled a big stone in front of the entrance to the tomb and went away. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were sitting there opposite the tomb.
After this, Joseph, who was from the town of Arimathea, asked Pilate if he could take Jesus' body. Joseph was a follower of Jesus, but in secret because he was afraid of the Jewish authorities. Pilate told him he could have the body, so Joseph went and took it away. Nicodemus, who at first had gone to see Jesus at night, went with Joseph, taking with him about 100 pounds of spices, a mixture of myrrh and aloes. The 2 men took Jesus' body and wrapped it in linen cloths with the spices, according to the Jewish custom of preparing a body for burial. There was a garden in the place where Jesus had been put to death, and in it there was a new tomb where no one had ever been buried. Since it was the day before the Sabbath, and because the tomb was close by, they placed Jesus' body there.
The Lord says, "It was my will that he should suffer."
Because I have come down from heaven to do not my own will, but the will of him who sent me.
His death was a sacrifice to bring forgiveness.
There is the Lamb of God, who takes away the sin of the world. This is the one I was talking about when I said, a man is coming after me, but he is greater than I am, because he existed before I was born. I did not know who he would be, but I came baptizing with water in order to make him known to the people of Israel.
And John gave this testimony.
I saw the Spirit come down like a dove from heaven and stay on him. I still did not know that he was the one, but God, who sent me to baptize with water, had said to me, "You will see the Spirit come down and stay on a man. He is the one who who baptizes with the Holy Spirit. I have seen it, and I tell you that he is the Son of God.
And so he will see his descendants. He will live a long life, and through him, my purpose will succeed.
I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will have the light of life and will never walk in darkness.
After a life of suffering, he will again have joy. He will know that he did not suffer in vain.
Peace be with you.
After saying this, he showed them his hands and his side. The disciples were filled with joy at seeing the Lord. Jesus said to them again,
Peace be with you. As the Father sent me, so I send you.
Then he breathed on them.
Receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive people's sins, they are forgiven. If you do not forgive them, they are not forgiven.
My devoted servant, with whom I am pleased.
As soon as Jesus was baptized, he went up out of the water. At that moment, heaven was opened, and he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and lighting on him. And a voice from heaven said, This is my Son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased.
Will bear the punishment of many.
But he had Jesus flogged and handed him over to be crucified.
And for his sake, I will forgive them.
When they had crucified him, they divided up his clothes by casting lots. And sitting down, they kept watch over him there.
And so I will give him a place of honor, a place among the great and powerful.
Believe in God, and believe also in me. There are many rooms in my Father's house, and I'm going to prepare a place for you. I would not tell you this if it were not so. And after I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to myself, so that you will be where I am. You know the way that leads to the place where I am going.
He willingly gave his life and shared the fate of evil men. He took the place of many sinners and prayed that they might be forgiven.
Put on the cross. Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews, is what he wrote. Then the Jewish authorities asked Pilate to allow them to break the legs of the men who had been crucified and to take the bodies down from the crosses. They requested this because it was Friday, and they did not want the bodies to stay on the crosses on the Sabbath, since the coming Sabbath was especially holy. So the soldiers went and broke the legs of the first man, and then of the other man who had been crucified with Jesus. But when they came to Jesus, they saw that he was already dead, so they did not break his legs. One of the soldiers, however, plunged his spear into Jesus' side. And at once, blood and water poured out. The one who saw this happen has spoken of it, so that you may also believe. What he said is true, and he knows that he speaks the truth. This was done to make the scripture come true. Not one of his bones will be broken. And there is another scripture that says, people will look at him whom they pierced.
Who would have believed what we now report?
Unless I see the scars of the nails in his hands, and put my finger on those scars, and my hand in his side, I will not believe.
All recorded and frozen supernaturally on the Shroud of Turin, so that 2,000 years later we can still see the physical and visible evidence of Jesus. That proves the Holy Bible to be forensically accurate and perfectly reliable in every possible way, and in every detail, truthful, concerning the most important event in human history, the crucifixion of Jesus, the greatest miracle in the world, the triumph and resurrection of Yeshua. If you are looking for the evidence of Jesus, here it is. It is time to turn away from our sins, believe, and receive salvation, and follow Jesus. Let today be the day of your salvation. May you come, see, and find the hidden treasure. His name is Yeshua, and be saved. Amen.